everybody. This is Charity Smith, Ms. Mogul, the host of Master Your Morning with Ms. Mogul. We are in for a treat today. Today is the finale show of my series of Leading Like a Lioness in celebration of International Women's History Month. We've had engaging and riveting interviews all month long, and I'm super excited to wrap up this series with two powerhouses, two wonderful women. I had the pleasure of meeting at a recent Houston Dash event and was just really intrigued with their organizations and the work they do on a daily basis in the trenches, leading the efforts and the empowerment of women. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce you to the Lionesses in the Den today. I have with me Sonia Corrales, who is the interim CEO of the Houston Area Women's Center. She will speak with us today, as well as Jolea Payne, Director of Girls Inc. here in the greater Houston area. And let me tell you why this conversation will be so important. We're having a generational discussion now about the women's rights and the women's movement going forward, and how we can now bring the girls along as we get our act together and as we move this whole ship forward. So without further ado, ladies, welcome to the Lioness Den.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So please tell the folks who you are. You both have extremely impressive biographies, but I wanted you, in your own words, to introduce yourselves to the audience. We'll start with you, Jolea. Please introduce yourself. Awesome. Lioness Jolea.
Yeah, I receive it. Thank you, Charity, again for the invitation. My
pleasure.
name is Jolea Payne. As you mentioned, I am Program Director for Girls Inc. of Greater Houston, where we inspire all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And we do that in partnership with schools and community organizations. And we take our outcomes-based and research-based curriculum into the schools, and we try to fire up girls. We teach them about financial literacy, media literacy, leadership skills. We do, of course, STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so we kind of run the gamut. But really it's about teaching girls, showing girls, being examples for girls on how to have a voice, to share their voice, be advocates for themselves, and to be advocates for others. And so that's what I do now. I've spent the last 10 or 12 years or so of my professional career in nonprofit and public sector doing education and workforce development. So I guess, it's in my blood. It's my purpose. It's my calling. And so that's where I've been, and that's where I'm going.
And so I'm glad you're there. We're going to talk a lot about Girls Inc. during this segment, but Sonia, really want to bring you to the table. Tell us about who you are and your new role now as interim CEO at the Houston Area Women's Center.
Thank you very much, and I'm very, very happy to be here.
My pleasure.
I was excited. I love the questions. I love all of it.
Thank you.
I mean, and if people could see just the room and the energy here, it's really awesome.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you.
So I am Sonia Corrales, and I am currently serving as interim president and CEO at the Houston Area Women's Center. I have been there 26 years as of March 19th.
Wow. Congratulations.
So this really is my life's work.
Yeah.
I've been in the anti-violence movement my entire career since I've left college. I've had my entire career spent at the Houston Area Women's Center, working maybe in 6 or 7 different capacities. Starting as a counselor in sexual assault, going out and providing services out in the community to Latino, in the Latino community. And so since my career, in addition to providing that service, I've spent a lot of time on either committees, on boards, on task forces, really addressing this issue of anti-violence, working with at the state level with the Texas Council on Family Violence or Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, really changing law so that we can evolve and make it better, right? So not only with the response to domestic and sexual assault, but also on the prevention side. So what are we doing about it now, and how are we preventing it in the future? So really, this is my life's work, spent my entire time there.
And so before we go any further, let me celebrate you both for what you do on a daily basis for women and for the cause and the betterment of women. And I love what you all said about the educational component for girls, and then the legislative part you have for women, and how they really do marry each other at different stages. They really do marry each other. And to know that you're not just talking women's empowerment, but you've committed a life to that, I think is something to be celebrated. So before we go any further, let me celebrate you both, and you all roar and you rock.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So want to start with you, Jolea. You work with girls on a daily basis, and you see the state of girls, and you see the culture now that girls are engaging in. Under the canopy now of the Me Too movement, what do you think the legacy of the Me Too movement will mean for girls? What do you think this movement what impact is the question I want to ask you? What impact will it have on girls now, 5, 10 years from now?
I think that, I'm very excited to be living in this moment, to be able to see this moment of, hashtag Me Too and hashtag Time's Up. And I think that, the Me Too movement started many, many years before last year, 2017, when it really started to gain momentum. But I think that for young girls growing up in this time, it is allowing them to see, and this is what we teach at Girls Inc. You have a voice, and it's okay to, to share your opinion, to ask questions, to, buck opinions,
She say buck.
Respectfully.
Okay,
respectfully, but not to just accept any and everything. Don't acquiesce that people tell you. And so I think that it is empowering girls to really speak up for themselves, to speak up for others. And I'm just glad that we're allowing now, or expanding rather, that space for them to do that and feel comfortable in doing that.
What are some of the tangible things that you're doing to really help that? And I'm the lioness at heart, right? So you'll hear me talk about roar this, roar that. But what are some of the tangible techniques and tools that you're giving girls on a daily basis to help them embrace their voice? I've said on some of the other shows that I grew up in the South primarily, and I didn't wear my pearls today, but you always clutch the pearls, and you're never heard, but you're seen. Women ladies rather, are never heard, but they're seen, and they don't really have opinions according to the old paradigms. How are you now educating girls and empowering girls to embrace their unique voice?
So that's a wonderful question. One of the foundations of Girls Inc., the Girls Inc. experience, is our Girls Inc. Girls Bill of Rights.
Oh, and I love that.
It's 6 statements that really speak to what girls should be able to do. It's, girls should be able to express their originality and enthusiasm. Girls should be able to explore economic independence and things like that. And so we do that by first of all of our spaces are girls-only spaces and pro-girl spaces. By pro-girl, we mean that we allow girls to be leaders. We allow girls to speak up, to share their opinions. We encourage questions. That's really how you teach girls to speak up, to roar, if you will, to have a voice, by giving them the space, a safe space, a brave space, if you will.
I love that.
For them to actually do that without judgment. And so we allow girls that space to be curious, to ask questions. There's no stupid question, and so just really kind of allowing them that space to explore themselves, right, and to explore what's going on in society, to explore what's happening in their schools and in their families, without that feeling of that they'll be judged, or that their question is dumb or that it's stupid. That's really how we really get girls to sort of open up, come out of the box.
And it sounds like there's just a constant reinforcement of courage.
All the time.
A constant reinforcement of energy and courage. And
it's regardless of what we're teaching. So we teach media literacy, about how women are portrayed in the media, and we encourage girls to look at how women and girls are being portrayed in videos, YouTube videos, and on TV, and to share their feelings about what they're seeing. But it's the same when we're doing a science experiment. What does this mean for you? How do you feel doing this experiment? What are the questions that came up for you
when you solved that calculus problem? How did you feel?
Right? Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So allowing them to share their feelings and emotions, positive and negative.
So that is so important, and I think not I think, but I know, with that kind of environment happening, I'm more at ease with where the women's rights movement will happen, but you're engaged in it right now, Sonia. And I think you have a very unique perspective on the Me Too movement, given your background in social activism and the anti-violence movements. Tell me your perspective. What do you see on a daily basis, and how is it now feeding the Me Too movement, or what can we do to enhance the Me Too movement from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent question. And, as previously stated, the Me Too movement obviously is not a new movement. We've been in business since 1977.
Yeah.
So we've been working in this anti-violence work for 41 years, or almost 41 years.
Wow.
The Me Too movement was really about going out and really providing a message to a community that was underserved. So it was really for people of color and women of color to say, hey, me too, this is happening to me too. And that's an important message, and I think it's important for people to
Right
know
on.
that,
Yeah.
that's where it started,
Yeah.
right? And the Me Too movement for us has been this really this time for people to say, I'm ready to stand out and speak out, and I have a voice. Now, having said that, because we know that sexual violence and domestic violence are very traumatic experiences, we also say empowerment is an important piece, because with that, you also have a choice not to necessarily say anything to you, right? So if I'm a victim or a survivor of sexual assault, I want to be able to feel safe enough to speak out.
Absolutely.
And if I don't want to, that's okay. And that's our message too. And so this Me Too movement is also about holding people accountable.
That's good.
Because the other thing was that when people come forward, especially survivors of sexual harassment or sexual assault, the first thing that happens to them and that we know is that they're not believed. And so this is an opportunity for people to say, I believe you. And that, can you imagine anybody that comes forward, moving forward, that says, I've been sexually harassed, or I've been in this situation, or I've been a victim of sexual assault, and everybody says, I believe you.
And isn't that the most, and I don't know if anybody here at the table has had that unfortunate experience, but I write about mine in the book, The Roar of a Woman. And just having someone say, they don't have to understand, they don't even have to have the answers, but just saying, I believe you, gives credence and legitimacy to the experience and what has happened. And that alone many times will bring women to another place of bravery and to another place of courage and getting their lives back on track. Just saying, I believe you. Now tell me, same question that I posed to Jolea, give me one or two of the things that you do on a daily basis to encourage women, to empower them to embrace their roar in their own voice.
Yeah. And I will tell you, starting with I believe you is an important beginning.
Yeah.
When people come forward and talk about sexual violence, they may or may not have reported to the police. Many times they don't. Many times they wait a long time, to come forward. And we know that, some of the reasons why. But when they come to our organization or call our hotline, that treating them with respect, telling them that we believe them, that it's not their fault, and that we're here to provide those services and create that environment where there's empowerment is important for us. So it's giving them their own specific tools that they come up with so that they can leave there and learn how to use those coping skills when they leave. Sexual violence, domestic violence, sexual harassment are very traumatic experiences.
Yes, they are.
And so being able to gain those tools to be able to cope with them and then move forward is pretty incredible to see. Survivors of violence are incredibly resilient.
Yes.
And that's what we see when they leave there. But starting with the I believe, it's not your fault, and we are here for you. Is an important step for them, and we know that makes a difference.
So if you're there and you're watching right now, please tune in, have people log on and share the Master Your Morning with Ms. Mogul. Use that hashtag, Master Your Morning with Ms. Mogul. You may even choose to use the Me Too, but start logging on if you have questions or concerns. If you need these resources and you need to talk to someone or get a strategy or a plan of exit, please please log on. The show will connect you with Sonia and the Houston Area Women's Center. If you have a young girl who may be shy and introverted and is just waiting to bloom and blossom, please log on to the Facebook page, post your question there. I promise you the show will connect you with Jolea and Girls Inc. These two ladies are doing very important work on a daily basis, and let me tell you, you don't have to stay where you are. If you're waiting to bloom and blossom, there are lionesses here in the community who will roar you to the next level. So please connect with the Master Your Morning show. Send this link to someone. We'll get you in touch with those resources. Ladies, want to change a bit of the dialogue here and want to ask you, Jolea, how important is it for us and in having purposeful mentoring for girls? How important is it that we be very diligent in mentoring our girls, in showing them strong leaders, in really creating the narrative with them about what leadership looks like for them? How important is that?
Very. I mean, I think the word that you use, purposeful, is right on. We like to use at Girls Inc. when we consider and share about our program, we use the word intentional. You know, we deliver intentional programming and programming that is compensatory, meaning that it helps compensate for all of the barriers that young ladies today face in society. But it's also very intentional. Everything that we do, from, you know, even free time, you know, unstructured time, it's intentional. It's about allowing girls, again, that space to speak for themselves, to, you know, share their emotions, for us to say, we believe you, we support you, we encourage you, we'll hold your hand. So I think it's very important, because we don't want them to just kind of stumble along on their own, trying to figure it out.
Not on our watch. Not on our watch.
Not on our watch. Because I think that's kind of what we're seeing now with the young people who have taken the country by storm in addressing the gun control in our country, you know. And you think to yourself, well, why haven't the adults figured this out yet? And I really believe it's because we hadn't been intentional and purposeful about how we address things in the way that these young people have been. They have been very intentional and purposeful about this protest against gun control. And so I think it's important for us to really, you know, pull aside the young ladies, pull aside young women, and really embrace them and share with them, allow space for them, be intentional about making ourselves available to them, prioritizing them, and then for us to live the example, not just talk about it, not just speak about it, but to really live out the example that we want. Because they really, more than anything, more than they listen to us, they watch us. Yeah, and that I know for sure.
That's awesome. Look, I have a 16-year-old daughter. I know, you know, they do. But you brought up something, and I think I have a bit of a different spin, talking about the children who recently organized the National March, making their voices heard, right, about their concerns about gun violence in the school. I look at that from this perspective. If women had not, maybe, just maybe, that voice came out of those women who said, that happened to me too, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And some woman's child saw, well, if mom can stand up, or if my legislator can stand up for me, maybe this is something that I can do too. So perhaps it's those acts of courage that we see in our own lives that our children are watching. They're learning what courage looks like. You know, and that's why I think the work that you both do is so important, particularly you, Sonia, for women who have children. It's so important that they see us take those stands, and it's so important that they see us defend our places in the world and have a voice, so that just maybe rather, my 16-year-old daughter or some 13-year-old neighbor's child will say, I want to be like that. Maybe that's something that I can do too. Maybe I can be strong too. Maybe I can have an opinion that matters too. And so I'm hoping what will happen is that after those movements, we'll change the hashtag of Me Too to something totally different. Me too, I accomplished that. Me too, I made a difference in the world. Me too, my voice was heard. Me too, I didn't take it. I stood up for myself. So I think you're onto something there about the intentional mentorship, about how we create the narrative with them. I keep going back to that phrase because it's so important. They don't know unless we give them the template. What does courage look like? Let me look at Mom. What does courage look like? Let me look at Sonia. What does courage and leadership look like? I heard about that lady named Jolea. I think I want to be like her. So it's so important that we be intentional and purposeful. But now I want to change the dynamic of that question a bit to you, Sonia. How important is it that women who have been through these kinds of challenges become more transparent with their stories of not just survival, but triumph? Certainly it's women's right not to say anything. But if you have been there and you have a success story, here I am, and you finally have the courage to share it, how important is it to share that with another woman in hopes of that she will then have a me too, I'm out. Me too, I'm stronger. How important is that?
Oh my goodness, that is so incredibly important. The speaking out piece. So one of the values that we work with at the Houston Area Women's Center is that of empowerment. And so it is finding that. So when someone gets to a point where they feel like they're able to speak out and this is what they want to do, we encourage them to do so. And we have, venues that they can do it. They can do it in a support group within their own group. They can do it out in their communities. They can partner with us and do it, through media. They can partner with us and do it at different events. Oftentimes we have them go out to speak to the board members, and just as mission moments, right? So, but it's really about them and them deciding, speaking out. Speaking out is an important piece because it also says to other people, you are not alone, and that this is something that happens, to everyone, and that's an important piece because it is important for us to be able to prevent it in the future, right? And especially, you're talking about the children. So one of the things that we do at the Houston Area Women's Center is also provide counseling to children who have been witnesses of domestic violence. Perhaps they haven't been physically hit, but we know that they hear, we know that they're impacted, and we know that domestic violence is...
And there is a trauma to the children who witness that.
And so providing counseling to those children is part of our prevention strategies, and we include those in our counseling, in addition to the ones who have been impacted directly. So that looks like, so at the Houston Area Women's Center, we hit all levels of prevention. That the intervention piece and the strategies that are included in that in the counseling are secondary prevention strategies, so that we prevent it from continuing to happen, right? And we give the survivor those tools as well. But one important piece, that is really, really critical, and we're already talking about it here, and that's primary prevention. So how do we stop the violence before it happens?
Absolutely.
And so we're doing two things here. One of them is prevention of any more victims, any more survivors. But the other thing too is prevention of perpetrators. So how do we do both? Because in our society, in order to stop violence, you have to stop that perpetrator, right? So how do we do that? And we call that primary prevention. And there's this movement in the state of Texas, and we're all doing it. I hear it with Girls Inc. I mean, it's there. And that it's really, really trying to figure out what the causes or the root causes of violence are, and exposing those that are lying in our culture, right? The values that condone violence.
Right.
So identifying them, exposing them, and then trying to change them. And we do that in the classroom. So we know that our target are going to be kids. Now, if it was up to me, we'd be in the elementary schools, because that's where it starts.
Absolutely.
And we don't necessarily go in there and say, this is what sexual violence is, this is what teen dating violence is, but it really is talking about the root causes. So in the root causes are oppression, racism, sexism, all of those things that contribute to violence, and talking about them and having discussions and dialoguing with these children, and that they can change the way that they think and they view, for example, women. You talked about how women are portrayed in media, how women are portrayed in movies. So talking about those issues, and then they begin to frame their own ideas of how that is not okay. And whenever someone is talking and you're among your friends and it's a group of maybe potentially boys or even girls saying, oh, look at that, and they call a woman a name, that you have bystander intervention and you say that is not okay. You should not call women that and refer to women as that, because then it objectifies them and they're no longer human.
And that's the point that I wanted to make. And this is a conversation that we had before the show started, right? About this really is the genesis of a movement of women becoming finally and fully human, where we no longer objectified, not only in media, but in homes, in the boardroom, right? So it's about educating women about taking their places in the world, and then helping to create the narrative for girls that you do have a place. Right? So the show is going so quickly, ladies, and we're actually coming up to the end of it, and I'm frazzled because there's so much more I know is on the table that we need to talk about. But in closing, I want to hear your heart. Jolea, what is the state of girls in closing? Just a couple of words. And what keeps you hopeful about the state of girls?
Yeah, so, it's a little bit of both sides. I see some very traumatic, heartbreaking experiences occurring with girls. A lot of what you talked about, Sonia, in elementary schools, that girls have seen domestic violence, have experienced domestic violence. A lot of what we do in elementary schools, we are in elementary and middle and high schools, is talking about what does a healthy relationship look like, not just with the opposite sex, but also with girls with the same gender. What does it look like to have healthy relationships? And so I think that we still have work to do. We still have a lot of work to do with this generation in preparing them to be the leaders that we know that they can and will become. I think that what keeps me hopeful are stories like this past weekend where we saw, Sister Emma Gonzalez, where we saw Sister Naomi, the 11-year-old that spoke so boldly on stage. When we see, Sister Yolanda King, the granddaughter of Martin Luther King, talk about what her dream is. Those are the moments that keep me hopeful. When in a classroom with a girl who has been in a shell, who we thought was mute. We actually had an experience where we had a young lady in one of our sessions had not talked the entire time that she was in session, and the second to last session, she just started speaking out, just sharing, like overflowing, bubbling over. Those are the moments that really give me hope, when you can see a young lady feel empowered, when you can see that she's proud of herself. Those are the really the moments that give me hope for this generation of young women coming up.
Sonia, same question to you. Not only what keeps you hopeful, in just a few words, what keeps you hopeful, but how can now industry, volunteers, and corporate partners partner with you in this movement?
Yeah, I will tell you one that in 1977 we were talking about almost the very same issues that we're talking about today. Okay, now we've made lots of strides, and that's hope in and of itself.
Yes.
I think we're more inclusive, need to be more inclusive of women of color, and I think that's also keeps me hopeful. I think with our community, one of the things that is critical is talking about it, bringing awareness, and talking about it today in this forum is, to me, one of the most important things is to continue to talk about it, to continue to say that it is important. In terms of our community, providing that education. So one of the things that we do with our corporate partners is talk about the 3 R's. Be able to recognize, when you see abuse in your own companies, be able to respond to it effectively, to say to somebody that they believe them, that it's not their fault, and then be able to refer. One of the things that is important is for corporations and companies to look within their organizations to make sure that they have those policies that create a safe environment for people to come forward, and to hold people who are not following those policies accountable. And that's the important piece, is that we can do everything that we can around victim safety, but we can't do it without offender accountability. And those are two very important things that go hand in hand. And so so my message is, let's continue to talk about it. This is preventable.
Yeah.
This is not something that, that we can't prevent. This is, we also have to look at it as a community issue. It's not just the issue of the person that is impacting. It's the issue of their family. It's the issue of our entire communities. And so we have to continue to talk about it. We have to intervene. Prevention, prevention, prevention.
And if I can just add that it's not, just like Sonia's already mentioned, it's about prevention with the perpetrator. So yes, we're having all of these conversations with the girls and the young women.
Come on.
But let's not forget
Our boys.
not forget our boys. And we need to be having these same conversations with our boys about, and with them together about how do you respect each other, how do you respect each other's bodies. And so we need to be having these conversations on both sides to really.
And I know that it's Women's History Month, and we want to value the contributions of women, all women, but we also know that in our world that men are also victims of crime.
Absolutely.
They're victims of domestic violence, and they're victims of sexual violence, and boys as well as men. And so that's an important thing, I think, to mention.
And we do want to be responsible in this dialogue, right? We do want to be responsible in that. Ladies, it has been a pleasure entreating you today. Thank you so much for joining me today in the Lioness Den. So much of what Sonia and Jolea have talked about today, maybe you know someone who has been the unfortunate recipient of domestic violence. Perhaps you've endured sexual harassment in the workplace. What I'm hoping will happen from this discussion, though, is that we'll take that discussion and that offense, and we'll broaden the discussion about, again, what does it mean to have boundaries? What does it mean to have rights? What does it mean to be fully human? What does it mean to be fully respected as a woman? Let's start having the tough conversations. And I'm going to even invite, and I didn't tell them this before the show started, I have launched a new campaign. A couple of years ago, I started a petition with Ted Poe in his office about Girls Global Leadership Day. Girls Global Leadership Day is a day in celebration of the Day of the Girl Child with the UN, where the world turns its attention to the state of girls globally and what their economic, educational, and healthcare needs are. I think that we need to have something stateside where we're not just looking at March for International Women's History Month, but we're looking at maybe the end of the year too with something for the girls. And there's this cyclical discussion all year long about our accomplishments, our triumphs, but what are we still working towards, and having a cyclical approach to this conversation rather than one day here and one day there. So I'm going to relaunch this petition for Girls Global Leadership Day. Let's get it on the calendars. We need to have a day where we turn our attention towards girls and women, and we focus on the overall well-being. It's not just about being a survivor, but let's celebrate the things that we've accomplished as well. So ladies, thank you so much for being in the studio with me today. Thank you all for tuning in. This show has been brought to you today by Mogul Life Real Estate and Lifestyle. If you are looking for a home, or if you'd like to learn to invest in real estate, please call the Mogul Life office at 281-676-9857. We would be so happy to help you with all of your real estate needs. Secondly, many of you know that I am now the new author of The Roar of a Woman. And so much of what we've talked about today, you will find in the book. Unfortunately and fortunately, I experienced those things, but I can honestly say there is life and triumph and victory and beauty and well-being and leadership and wholeness after all of that happens. If you'd like to know the story, please go to my website, charity.com, to get your copy. But I'm going to present my guest today with their copy of the book. If you'll pass that down. Yeah.
Exciting.
And if you'll take them out and show everybody the beautiful books, I'll have the opportunity to sign them with Sonia and with Jolea at the end. But ladies, I want to have a discussion with you perhaps after the show about how we can get these books in the hands of the women at the Houston Area Women's Center, and certainly in the hands of the girls who are at Girls Inc.
Absolutely.
There is a discussion there that we can have, and I would love to do that. But most of all, thank you for joining me on the show today. And if you will look here at the beautiful table, we're not just talking about the roar of the woman, but I want to celebrate other women who are embracing their roar. So there are products that are available. We have beautiful t-shirts, the mugs that are there. If you'd like to get your mug, your shirt, and your copy of the book, go to charity.com. Finally, I don't know if there are any events that you ladies have coming up, but I encourage everyone, go to their websites. Go to the Houston Area Women's Shelter website, and I believe it's hawc.org.
That's right.
And then we have Girls Inc. Houston.org.
Correct.
To get all of the programs that are available with Girls Inc. This has been a power-packed, full show. We have not even scratched the surface, but I can commit to you this. This is not the last time we will have this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to move the movement forward and not just talk about it, but let's legislate it. Let's fund it. Let's mentor. Let's volunteer. Let's roll up our sleeves and really become the change agents we say we want to see. And with that said, you have just mastered your morning. I'll see you next week.